Hello, everyone. My name is John from Community Life Church in Catskill, New York, and this is Meals Ready to Eat from the Bible. Hello, and welcome back. Today's episode is 5 Things About Faith in Action from Romans 10. Now, I know I say it a lot, but we can learn a lot simply from reading the Bible. And in it, we can see faith in action. And Romans 10 tells us a story about how we can believe in God, how we can trust God, how we can obey God, how we can live by faith. Our faith directs how we live. Clear on that. And here are 5 things about faith in action I learned just from reading Romans chapter 10. All right, let's break this down, see what we can get out of the scripture, see what I learned at any rate, and can understand faith in action. Point number 1, this is Romans 10, verses 3 through 4. For not knowing about God's righteousness and seeking to establish their own, they did not subject themselves to the righteousness of God. For Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone who believes. Well, the difference between living by faith and living by law, and law is that thing we do based on what I think and my own efforts, is who do we trust? Do I trust God enough to follow and rely on Him, or do I want to do it myself? Very tempting to try to earn our salvation based on what we do, what I do. But this is the opposite of faith and leads us absolutely nowhere. Faith in action is believing, trusting even when we cannot see a way that what Jesus did is sufficient, and what He did alone, He did for us. It is saying that Jesus is our salvation and living in a way that reflects that. Number 2, this is verses 8 and 9. But what does it say? The word is near you, in your mouth and in your heart. That is the word of faith which we are preaching. That if you confess with your mouth Jesus as Lord and believe in your heart that God raised Him from the dead, you will be saved. This sounds a lot like, all I got to do is say Jesus is Lord and everything's going to be fine. That's not what this says. The words that come out of my mouth must mirror what I think in my heart. In other words, whatever we say must reflect what we really are and who we really are in Jesus. Our words must come from a heart that allows Jesus to change us. Unless we allow Jesus to work His change in us, our words are just empty air. Point number 3, this is verse 10 and 11. For with the heart a person believes, resulting in righteousness, and with the mouth he confesses, resulting in salvation. For Scripture says, whoever believes in Him will not be disappointed. Now it becomes clear that our words should reflect our heart. What does Paul mean by heart? It is our thoughts, it's our feelings, it's our reactions, and all that stuff that goes on inside of us. For example, when I get upset, when I react based on who we really are, like if I get mad, that my words that come out of my mouth are going to reflect what's in my heart. We don't have time to hide our hearts behind a wall of words that we don't mean. This is when we got to look inside ourselves and pray for forgiveness and healing. God will answer a prayer for forgiveness. He always does. Then our hearts change and we become righteous. Point number 4. For there is no distinction between Jew and Greek or Gentile. For the same Lord is Lord of all, abounding in riches for all who call on Him. For whoever will call on the name of the Lord will be saved. That's Romans 10, 12, and 13. These 2 verses proclaim that the gospel is for all people. It reflects what God spoke about in the Old Testament. And that's Joel 2:32, Acts 2:21, Genesis 12:3, Isaiah 49:6, Zechariah 2:11, and so on. But God goes even further when He says there is no distinction. There's no favorites with God. His gospel is preached to all and for all. Our lives must reflect that. Point number 5. However, they did not all heed the good news, for Isaiah says, Lord, who has believed our report? So faith comes from hearing, and hearing by the word of Christ. That's 10:16 through 17. Just as the gospel is preached to everyone, to all mankind, we're expected to answer. Everyone has to answer. We're required to answer. No one can ignore the call of the gospel or say, I didn't hear it. Everyone will hear it one way or the other, in dreams, in visions, in the preached word, and so on and so forth. And we will all give an answer. Ignoring the call is a no. If you don't say yes, then it's a no. There's no maybe, I'll get back to you later and all that. We will say yes or we will say no. This message is preserved and preached in the Bible, which makes the Bible a very important book, one that we should read and one that we should understand and one that we should study. All right, so this is not an in-depth study of Romans chapter 10 or the book of Romans for that matter. The book of Romans is a very heavy book in theological concepts. There's a lot in it, and there's a lot in Romans chapter 10. But this is what I learned about faith in action just from reading Romans chapter 10. We must believe what Jesus tells us. That is, we must trust Jesus and what he has done. We have to put our full faith, trust, and hope and belief in him and obey him. A response is required of all people. If we do respond, we are changed, and that is good news. All right, thanks for watching. You can find us on the web at clchurch.cc. That's clchurch.cc. We meet 10:30 Sunday mornings in 20 West Main Street, Catskill, New York. Hope to see you there, and thanks once again.